9. Dulce Ortiz. In April 2022, while responding to a call about a car crash in Harris County, Texas, sheriff's deputies heard from a witness that a young woman had driven straight over a curb and struck a sign in the neighborhood. By the time law enforcement showed up at the scene, the suspect had already fled on foot. To make the situation even more strange, witnesses claimed that a man came to the crash scene and tried to take the blame for the accident before police even got there. The driver, 21-year-old Dulce Ortiz, appeared on the scene while deputies were trying to figure the situation out. She allegedly showed some obvious signs of being intoxicated. So the decision was made to take her into custody. According to law enforcement, Ortiz tried to bribe a male deputy during her ride to jail, offering a few physical favors, if you get what we mean, in exchange for money. He declined, of course, and Ortiz was then charged with bribery on top of everything else. 8. Royal Scoop Daniel III. From the outside looking in, Royal Scoop Daniel III had everything he could ever want. He was wealthy, well-liked, and a successful real estate lawyer and financier in the resort town of Breckenridge, Colorado. Daniel made no effort to hide the fact that he enjoyed luxury. But he was also a philanthropist who seemed to care deeply about giving back to the community. At around 8:30 a.m. in April 2007, a coworker of Daniel's arrived at their office and discovered his dog, a freshly brewed pot of coffee, a broken pair of sunglasses, and a partially eaten bowl of cereal. But Daniel was nowhere to be found. His colleagues soon reported him missing that afternoon. Investigators later discovered a secret side to Daniel's life. The 60-something-year-old divorcee and father of 8 was accused of defrauding his clients out of more than $700,000. He was also deep in debt and behind on child support. When they searched his property, his motorcycle and passport were missing. Suspecting that Daniel disappeared on purpose to avoid his legal troubles, police issued an arrest warrant and the state of Colorado suspended his law license. Nobody saw or heard from him for almost 4 years, until he was caught trying to enter the U.S. on foot from Mexico. The entire time Daniel was gone, he kept a low profile and made a living as a freelancer. When he tried going back to the U.S. with his real passport, Daniel received a 12-year prison sentence. He apologized in court, but for many it was too little, too late. They felt betrayed and were now coming to terms with the realization that they had never known the real Scoop Daniel. 7. Saharat Sawangjang. In Thailand, a drug dealing conviction comes with severe consequences, including but not limited to the death penalty. Understanding the risks involved, one 25-year-old kingpin went to extreme lengths to avoid getting caught and arrested, including going under the knife and having plastic surgery done to switch up his appearance. Saharat Sawangjang had already been arrested for dealing multiple times when he once again became a wanted fugitive in 2022. Police obtained a warrant after intercepting a package filled with a large amount of MDMA that was on its way to Sawangjang's apartment in Bangkok's Bang Na district. When law enforcement caught up with the young man just 3 months later, they had to do a double take just to make sure it was actually him. Sawangjang's once blemished skin had cleared up entirely, taking years off his appearance, and he also lost a considerable amount of weight. His face looked like a different person, so it made sense that recent witnesses had mistakenly described Sawangjang as an attractive South Korean man. He had gotten some work done on his face, and it seemed as if he deliberately altered his physical features to look stereotypically Korean. Sawangjang allegedly confessed to dealing drugs that he purchased on the dark web and paid for with cryptocurrency. He said that he planned to start a new life in South Korea under the name Jimin Sung, despite not knowing the language at all. Thankfully, that won't be happening anytime soon, since he's now in custody and facing a charge for importing narcotics. 6. Out-of-place alligator sighting. In southwestern New York, near the Pennsylvania border, the city of Jamestown is not the kind of place you'd expect to see an alligator. In fact, an alligator has probably never been spotted in Jamestown, period. But one shady character allegedly saw one of the beasts in the city's Panzarella Park in an attempt to distract police officers from arresting a fellow park-goer nearby. The strange incident happened at about 3 o'clock in the morning in August 2023. According to the authorities, a woman flagged down a few officers who were patrolling the park and claimed she saw an alligator in the nearby Chattoocoin River. Apparently unfazed by what they most likely knew was not a real alligator sighting, the cops continued along their typical patrol route. They soon crossed paths with a 44-year-old local resident named Jason Goodwin, who they say was violating an order of protection. Further investigation reportedly revealed that the reported alligator sighting was a poorly thought-out attempt to lure officers away from Goodwin's location, so they wouldn't notice him in the park. At the time, the suspect had already been convicted of second-degree criminal contempt. He now faces additional charges of first-degree criminal contempt and aggravated family offense. 5. Robert Bobby Walls. Authorities in Brevard County, Florida, made well over 100 arrests throughout the first half of 2019 as part of a large-scale investigation into the area's bustling drug activity. But detectives weren't going to be fully satisfied until they captured one infamous man named Robert Bobby Walls, who had managed to evade arrest for weeks. Acting on a tip regarding the suspect's whereabouts, deputies staked out a local property with plans to make a forced entry. Before that could happen, though, a man with long, messy blonde hair left the home and hopped on a bicycle. Since the bike matched the description of Walls' bike, deputies paid extra close attention. It didn't take them that long to realize the man was actually Walls, and that he was trying to disguise himself by wearing a bad wig. When confronted by law enforcement, Walls admitted his real identity and said he knew he was wanted. He also conceded that he wore the wig in hopes of throwing detectives off his trail. Walls was even honest enough to admit that if he knew investigators were staking out the residence, he would have tried to run into the nearby woods. But it was too late for that, and Walls cooperated as he was taken into custody. He was charged with conspiracy to possess a controlled substance, solicitation to sell a controlled substance, and unlawful use of a two-way device. 4. Daniel Christopher Booth. In 2020, 36-year-old Daniel Christopher Booth was working at a solar plant near Wellborn, Florida, when local law enforcement discovered that he had a few warrants out for his arrest after allegedly selling methamphetamine. A Suwannee County deputy paid him a visit at his workplace with plans to arrest him. But Booth wasn't going to go down easily. He escaped on foot and hid in a nearby pond, thinking he would just dunk his head underwater when he saw police and canines coming. In his mind, Booth may have been picturing the type of escape you'd see in an action movie. But a person can only hold their breath for so long, and Booth's plan quickly fell through when he had no choice but to surface for air in plain sight. He was soon captured and was taken to the local jail, soaked to the bone. On top of the charges he faced in connection to his warrants, Booth faced an additional count of resisting arrest without violence. 3. Sean Miller. Throughout the course of an investigation into Cape Cod's drug trade that started back in 2015, detectives traced illicit activity to the Naughty Block Street Gang. More specifically, they discovered that the gang controlled the area's heroin trade. It took time for investigators to track down the organization and its players, who took extensive measures to hide their crimes. The group used different cars and safe houses, as well as disguises. While conducting surveillance on the home of a suspected gang member named Sean Miller in Hyannis, police saw an old man coming and going from the house. At first, they didn't think it could be Miller since he was only 31 years old. But on a closer look, detectives realized that something seemed off about the senior citizen. They confronted the man, and by the end of the conversation, they peeled a shockingly lifelike mask off of Miller's head. He had been hiding in plain sight for weeks. During a search of Miller's property, police found 2 loaded guns and $30,000 in cash. He was also carrying $10,000 in cash on him. Federal authorities charged Miller with possession of heroin with intent to distribute and being a convicted felon in possession of a firearm. He pleaded guilty to both crimes and was sentenced to 7.5 years in prison, then 5 years of supervised release. Miller was one out of 19 alleged Naughty Block members who were charged in connection to the gang's alleged drug dealing and other activities. And while Miller's sentence may sound like a long time, it was nothing compared to the 28.5-year sentence one of the gang's other big players received. 2. Eric Frayne. When a fugitive is both smart and determined enough to stay on the run, it can be expensive to hunt them down. Pennsylvania authorities spent $12 million over a 48-day manhunt to find and capture a dangerous cop killer named Eric Frayne. During a late-night shift change at a Pennsylvania State Police barracks in the Pocono Mountains back in 2014, Frayne opened fire in the parking lot, killing 38-year-old Corporal Brian K. Dixon II and injuring Trooper Alex Douglas. Frayne left the scene and managed to avoid capture while investigators scrambled to get to the bottom of the terrible case. 3 days after the shooting, a vehicle belonging to Frayne's parents was found submerged in a local pond. Inside, police found Frayne's social security card, bullet casings, camouflage paint, and information about foreign embassies. Detectives thought that the suspect lost control of the car and crashed, instead of sinking it deliberately. Hundreds of law enforcement officers participated in the search for Frayne. They spotted him multiple times in the wilderness, but thanks to the challenging nature of the terrain, he kept getting away before the police caught up with him. Finally, over a month and a half after the shooting, a U.S. Marshals Special Operations Group apprehended Frayne near an abandoned airfield. He was taken into custody and charged with first-degree murder, attempted murder, assault of a law enforcement officer, 2 counts of terrorism, 2 counts of weapons of mass destruction, and more. In 2017, a jury found Frayne guilty on all charges and recommended he be given the death sentence. He remains on death row at a Pennsylvania state prison to this day, but it's unlikely that he'll ever actually be executed. Pennsylvania has not taken anyone's life since 1999, and while the death penalty still exists and is available in the state, it seems to be falling out of favor. The most important thing is that Frayne will never be free again. 1. Henry Kraus. Shortly after getting released from a New York State prison in 1992, career burglar Henry Kraus failed to show up to a meeting with his parole officer. Naturally, it wasn't long before authorities issued a warrant, but he was nowhere to be found, and his whereabouts remained a mystery for about 5 years. In 1997, road workers in Tompkins County saw smoke spewing from what looked like a brush pile in the nearby forest. They walked over to get a better look. As they got closer to the smoke, a rugged-looking man emerged from the ground and told them to go away. After exchanging some words back and forth, the workers conceded to the senior citizen's demands and left. They contacted authorities about the bizarre encounter. Environmental officers and a forest ranger responded. Just like the workers who discovered the site, they crossed paths with an old man. At first, the hermit angrily confronted the group, but he quickly realized he was outnumbered, so he surrendered peacefully. The man was Henry Kraus, and for more than 5 years, he lived in a crude underground bunker under the brush pile the workers saw smoke coming out of. It was a small space, measuring only 6 feet, 1.83 meters wide, and 5 feet, 1.5 meters high. In other words, a man of Kraus's size wouldn't have been able to stand up straight in the shelter. But the bunker was well insulated and served Kraus well. During a search of the makeshift home, law enforcement found a wood-burning stove and a handwritten log where Kraus tracked his activities. The logbook offered interesting insight into how the fugitive went undetected. He barely left during the winter to avoid leaving footprints in the snow. But during warmer seasons, he occasionally rode his bike to a nearby shop to stock up on supplies. Kraus sometimes even visited family and friends, who kept remarkably quiet about his whereabouts. And for living in the woods for so long, Kraus was surprisingly well-groomed. He was clean-shaven, brushed his teeth regularly, and kept up on his hygiene by taking baths in a nearby creek. But he couldn't hide in the woods forever. His capture meant trading his bunker for a prison cell. Thanks for watching. If your friend blamed you for a crime they committed, would you ever be able to forgive them, or would it be a deal breaker that ends the friendship? Let us know in the comments below, and remember to subscribe. See you soon. Bye.